What's going on, everybody? I'm back with another video. This video is going to be looking at Real Madrid's tactics in possession, mainly focusing on their wide triangles and the role their two holding midfielders play to connect their team and progress against a 4-4-2 or a 4-5-1. Now, before we get into the tactics behind Real Madrid in possession versus Barcelona, be sure to subscribe to the channel to get updates on this app. I know the company's working really hard to get it out to people, and there's going to be a lot of free giveaways, so it'll be super exciting. So be sure to subscribe to the channel for that. And in the description, check out both my books and my tactics course. Now let's get right into the tactics behind Real Madrid. So Real Madrid would start with a 2-2 base, and then they would use very strong wide triangles. And with players like Vinicius Jr., Rodrigo, and Jude Bellingham able to play in the half space and create width and in very good 1v1 situations. Then we have players like Mendy and Dani Carvajal and Valverde to all give the structure control if transitions were to occur. They have a very well-balanced team. So as we see on the left, we have a strong wide triangle with a player narrow and deeper, a player between the lines in the half space, and a player creating full width. Then on the far side, we have players overloading the space between the lines with a wide player. So now as we move forward, what we'll often see from Real Madrid are their holding midfielders coming deeper into the half space. From here, they can get on possession, and on this travel, when the ball is coming either across the field from their holding midfielder, from the far side, or starting to play from a narrow central defender, on this ball travel is when the movement starts to occur. So by having a player on the half space, it starts the doubt on who will jump. So if a wide midfielder cheats and jumps, the midfield shifting will be disrupted because they won't have access to the full width now. So in which case they could widen out, and when the ball is played, the wide midfielder is taken out of position, and then this is where the movement starts to occur as well. So one thing about Real Madrid, they always have players threatening the half space to get in behind and separate the gap between central defenders. And because they're able to play without out-and-out number 9 at times and have players overload the space between the lines, it can force central defenders to jump, which then opens up more space for them to run in behind. Now, oftentimes when the player runs in behind, it'll affect the fullback in some way, shape, or form. So when the ball goes into a wide position, they have to detach. Perhaps the central defender followed the run, and now the back line starts to get broken. Then we have a 1v1 situation with a player coming back from an onside position to then create a 2 versus 1 around the fullback. Or if the midfield's shifting over to cover their out of place wide midfielder, we can then recycle possession, create another movement to threaten in behind, to then pin the back line even deeper. Or if they're playing an offside trap, we have players like Toni Kroos or other playmakers in the team to play these passes, and then we can always find the player recycling his run in the wide area to then reverse and progress. So it's a lot of runs in behind through the half space to then reverse and set up the wide triangle again. And now even we can look and establish the clear midfield shape again in a more shifted way. So now if our fullback's a bit detached, we always have the opposite side as well to make runs in behind with a 3-man wide structure waiting on the far side. And at the same time as this, we'll have a player like Tchouaméni also fan out into the half space waiting on the far side. So when possession occurs, possession's recycled on this strong side after players threatening, and then our wide midfielder will usually back press, and then we can always have the option of Toni Kroos. When a player plays, we threaten, recycle, and establish control. So if the defense shifts over adequately, we can find Toni Kroos, who can then diagonally dribble to attract 2 central midfielders. And because of the overload between the lines with the far player, we'll have to deal with this somehow. So the wide midfielder won't be able to cheat. The 2 strikers may often join the midfield to create a 3-man central midfield shape to try and deal with Toni Kroos. But this will often leave 3 players on the far side with heavy presence deeper in the half space. So even if they're in trouble, they have it in their locker to simply chip the ball across and find Tchouaméni on the far side. Then from here, we start the movements over again. So as the midfield is shifting, and now let's say to show something different, the wide midfielder tracks Dani Carvajal in the wide area, and now we have our back line shifting across. So we go into more of a back five because of our wide midfielder dropping. So then when we dribble to try and progress, we can then start the movements as well. And with the players they have available, they don't always have to threaten and recycle. They can target one player, overload both his shoulders, and diagonally dribble to then play the ball or access a third man to face forward. And at the same time, the weak side players are also very good at overloading the shoulders of defenders. So when the ball is progressed and we get in behind, say we have a third man access to get a player like Jude Bellingham facing forward, and we have a run coming across from out to in with players interchanging their position, and the ball's accessed in behind the back line into the golden zone. So now the team is quite high, so we're not going to shift all the players, but you can imagine a player in the golden zone in this area with 3 players crashing could cause very dangerous situations. But now we're going to go back and just talk about the holding midfielders on why this movement seems a bit unorthodox but works really well for them. So from here, because we have players in each half spaces, players between the lines either overloading or creating wide structures, we can even create wide diamonds with our holding midfielder at the base to try and create a 4v2 or 4 versus 3 on a quick circulation. But the constant is these players in the half spaces. And why this is so important is because, as we mentioned earlier, it disrupts the shifting of the midfield 4 or midfield 5 as they're coming across, but also creates strong diagonal passes to their teammates either in wide areas or in central areas. And it also gives them the ability to threaten in behind vertically and target the fullback center back gap for players running from out to in or in to out. So these diagonal passes make it possible to play through tight space, take advantage of 4v2s. Also, it further drags the midfield into wider areas to set up the far side. So if we can imagine, we have players playing in a very tight area out wide using full width, and maybe we even over exaggerate it a little bit. We'll stagger our wide diamond with a first line, second line, and third line pass, and even off center the third man at the tip of the diamond. Our back line shifts across, midfield shifts over, and now our cam from our defensive team starts to go. And even as we talked about, players, if they look to trap on one side, they have Tchouaméni who can come across and read these 2 players to try and break their connection and then access the far half space or the far wide area. So they have different versatility. They don't just stand in half space, but they read the situation around the ball, give the player what they need, and position themselves close enough to the half space that they can access the players between the lines. But if they need an outlet, either they'll create it through movement and quick combination play, or the far side guy can come in and they can access him on the ground to then start the play on the far side. But because they're in the half space, they create these strong diagonal options. They affect the opponents in how they shift. And finally, they can play skip passes out so the ball can travel from one half space to the other, and then make use of these overloads and try and progress the ball in a more dangerous way while the defense is shifting over. So if you can imagine the defense trying to shift across when the ball's already in the half space, players are driving forward, and now the team starts to get stretched. Players are out of position, and they're trying to get reset wall. Now the far side players are getting in range to attack the box when progression occurs. And then on top of this, you throw in their 1v1 quality to have an X factor in possession, makes it very, very difficult to defend against. So let me know your thoughts in the comments below. I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I'll see you in the next one.